Maya Ortiz first came to the Second Chance shelter on a gray February afternoon when the wind shoved grit hard enough to sting her cheeks. She had promised her dying grandfather, a retired orchestra conductor, that she would keep music alive wherever souls need it most. The shelter, perched on the edge of a defunct industrial district in Arboro City, seemed like as good a place as any. Fluorescent lights buzzed, chain-like partitions rattled, and the discordant chorus of barks, meows, bleats, and squawks ricocheted through the damp corridors. The din felt less like life and more like desperation, yet Maya sensed possibility beneath the noise, the way a composer hears a symphony inside silence. At first, she simply played her battered classical guitar during volunteer shifts, hoping to soothe the nervous animals awaiting adoption. One Tuesday, she strummed a gentle G major and noticed an elderly beagle named Copper humming along, a low, sustained note through his muzzle that matched her chord. She paused, played a minor seventh for curiosity's sake, and Copper adjusted, sliding to a half howl that resolved her progression. The technician beside her, twitchy from coffee and paperwork, didn't even look up. But Maya's pulse quickened. If one dog could match pitch, what could many animals do together? Word spread among staff that the music lady was experimenting down in Kennel D. Some mocked her, some shrugged, yet the shelter director, Evan Lee, harbored a secret dream of turning Second Chance from a transactional warehouse into a place of wonder. When Maya nervously outlined an idea, train a handful of residents to perform harmonized animal vocals at the upcoming city council meeting about environmental funding, Evan said, "Yes, so quickly," she momentarily doubted he'd understood. The next weeks unfolded like an improbable casting call. Copper, the beagle, remained the melodic anchor. Freckles, a deaf Australian shepherd who felt vibrations through the floorboards, wagged in time to every beat. There was Opal the calico, whose purring possessed a resonant fundamental that vibrated in Maya's sternum. A stoic, pot-bellied pig named Sonata grunted on perfect pitches that sat somewhere between a cello and a tuba. Two Angora rabbits, Moose and Merengue, thumped bass rhythms with hind paws. A rescued bar-headed goose answered to the name Maestro and trumpeted clarion high notes. Rounding out the ensemble was Lenny, an African gray parrot whose vocabulary included 4 curse words, the Star Wars theme, and, crucially, Maya's entire warm-up scale. Training, however, was another matter. Animals are not automatons. Their moods shift like weather fronts. Some days, Copper refused to do anything but nap. Opal demonstrated diva tendencies, walking off mid-session to bat at dust motes. Lenny kept blurting expletives whenever a chord progression frustrated him. Still, Maya applied every trick she'd learned from years of teaching human choirs. She replaced verbal solfege with colored lights projected on a opposing wall. Red meant hold, blue meant climb, green meant sustain. The animals watched, ears erect, whiskers twitching, feathers ruffling. She experimented with tempo using a metronome whose ticking was replaced by peanut-sized treat dispensers, a reward for each correctly timed note or thump. Gradually, chaos acquired structure. Copper held a rich middle C, while Maestro glided up to an E. Freckles, though deaf, synchronized paw taps by watching a light cue. Opal purred on a low G, and Sonata's baritone grunt nestled beneath. The rabbits provided a heartbeat. When everything clicked, the kennel's ordinary clamor transformed into a 6-part chord, so unexpected, a janitor wandering by dropped his mop and wept openly. The residents traveled through the concrete floor, out to adjacent rooms, quelling agitated barking all the way down the hallway. Maya had to sit before her knees betrayed her. She was hearing for the first time the fugitive music her grandfather believed lived in every creature. But the clock ticked. Airborough City's council would vote in 6 weeks on the Greenway Initiative, a plan either to sell 3,000 acres of fallow rail land to developers or repurpose it as a free-roaming nature sanctuary. The outcome looked grim. Lobbyists from Johnson Holdings promised jobs and condominiums shimmering with eco-friendly veneers. Conservationists had passion but no headline-grabbing angle. Evan argued that a choir of rescued animals singing for their futures might just tilt the narrative. Maya knew artistry alone wouldn't suffice. Politics devoured novelty for breakfast, so she collaborated with Dr. Kamala Cheng, an acoustic ecologist at the nearby university. Together, they recorded the Shelter Choir, mapping each vocalization's frequency to show how balanced natural soundscapes increase serotonin in human listeners. Kamala created spectrogram prints colored like auroras, translating the animals' harmonies into visuals lawmakers could grasp. The research packets outlined tangible mental health benefits of biodiversity. Then, Maya added a handwritten cover letter. Please listen with your hearts as well as your ears. Rehearsals moved from Canal D to the City Botanical Conservatory, loaned after closing hours for its gentle reverberation and fern-filtered air. The animals arrived in carriers, greeted by caretakers turned roadies. Copper wore a small blue bandana, Lenny perched on a collapsible music stand, muttering, "Ready, ready, don't mess up." Opal was coaxed into a soft crate with a sachet of catnip. Even Evan carried Sonata up the marble steps despite protests from maintenance staff about hoofmark. Under the glass dome, the ensemble's sound bloomed, rounding edges that had felt brittle in the kennels. Maya wept again, but privately now, she had a reputation to keep steady. The night before the council vote, the choir gave a sound check in the council chamber, nominally for technicians to test microphones, but really to gauge tolerance levels. A few aides covered smiles. One skeptical councilman whispered, "Circus show." Then Copper lifted his muzzle and held that deep, earnest C, and skepticism softened. Even the press pool fell silent long enough for Maestro to land a pure fifth overhead. The chord finished, paws, claws, and feathers shuffled. No applause came, applause would break the spell. Maya led the animals out. Behind her, she heard a reporter exhale. I felt that in my bones. On voting day, the chamber overflowed. People queued in hallways, live stream icons flickered. The shelter crew filed in, wearing matching shirts emblazoned with a paw print inside a treble clef. Maya set treat dispensers, adjusted colored lights, plugged in a single acoustic guitar as tonal anchor. Mayor Linda Park introduced the session and gave each delegation 5 minutes. Developers flaunted projections, bar charts, and architectural renderings, a city of glass towers flanked by token rooftop gardens. Conservationists spoke next, describing migratory corridors and carbon sequestration until some counselors' eyes glazed. Finally, Mayor Park called Second Chance Shelter Choir. Maya approached the dais, heart thrumming worse than any performance in her conservatory years. She said only, "These voices were once discarded. Let them speak for the land that has none." She plucked a soft minor arpeggio. Lights shifted red, blue, green. Copper began. A warm, almost plaintive note. Sonata joined a third below. Opal purred in the pocket of frequencies humans feel more than hear, massaging tension from necks. Maestro's goose call floated aloft, not shrill, but bell-like, surprisingly tender. Lenny layered a descant, whistling a motif from Vivaldi that Maya had practiced secretly with him at dawn. The rabbits provided pulse. Freckles' muzzle against the parquet floor sensed the micro vibrations and synchronized his silent, barking mouth open, body quivering, creating percussive breaths between chords. The sound filled corners not designed for such resonance. Smartphones stopped recording. People forgot to blink. In the quiet afterward, Councilwoman Romero dabbed tears, microphone still on, broadcasting her sniffle. Councilman Harkins, previously aligned with developers, leaned forward. "How did you teach them?" he asked, voice cracking. Maya answered, "I didn't teach them to be musical. I taught myself to listen." Debate resumed, but the atmosphere had shifted. Data slides looked sterile beside the memory of that chord vibrating collective rib cages. When Councilman Patel proposed a compromise amendment, full preservation of the rail land plus funding for an education center that the choir would inaugurate, nobody laughed at the idealism. The vote tallied 8-3 in favor of the Arboro Nature Sanctuary Act. Back at Second Chance, that evening, volunteers hosted an impromptu party. Dogs trotted under streamers. Cats sampled tuna pate. Sonata discovered a watermelon and wallowed in it, content. A local bakery delivered cupcakes iced with musical notes. Evan handed Maya a laminated newspaper, front page. Rescued Animals Win Landmark Sanctuary. She pinned it on the corkboard beside adoption photos. Yet amid congratulation, she noticed, Copper lying apart, ears drooping. That triumphant court inside council chambers had not healed his arthritic joints, nor guaranteed his own adoption. Victory for many did not erase the singular sadness of an old dog waiting for a home. The months following the vote entailed logistical marathons. Environmental engineers mapped wetlands, volunteers moved invasive weeds by hand, youth groups painted birdhouses. Maya served on the design board for an outdoor amphitheater shaped like an open shell nestled among willows. The stage floor integrated resonant wooden panels that transmitted vibrations so animals with hearing loss, like Freckles, could feel the music just as humans did. Dr. Cheng installed discrete acoustic sensors to measure how performances interacted with frogs, cicadas, and wind between grasses. The sanctuary, once a swath of rusted tracks, began greening under spring rain. During construction, the choir met weekly under a temporary canvas pavilion. Membership evolved. 2 adopted dogs returned with new families for cameo appearances. A trio of kittens apprenticed as backup purrs, and a rehabilitated owl contributed haunting trills at dusk. The purpose of their rehearsals had changed, however. No looming vote, no audience to persuade, simply celebration. Yet Maya, ever the conductor, set new ambitions, melding animal voices with human choir sections. She contacted her old conservatory colleagues. Some scoffed, others signed on instantly, seduced by the audacity of the experiment. Opening day of the sanctuary dawned with that particular clarity that follows night rain. Vapor rising from fern fronds, spiderwebs jeweled, a crowd of several thousand threaded along crushed gravel pathways toward the new amphitheater. Vendors sold wildflower seed packets and biodegradable bubble wands. Politicians arrived in sensible shoes, rehearsed speeches, and pocket notebooks. But everyone understood the centerpiece would again be the choir. Backstage, Maya knelt eye level with Copper, now sporting a custom joint support harness. "No more son, maestro," she whispered. He answered with a gentle wag. The human chorus, 30 voices strong, warmed up nearby, astonished at their 4-legged colleagues. Freckles trotted among them, soaking up pats, unbothered by the hubbub he could not hear. Lenny, preening atop a mic boom, assured anyone listening, "We got this." News cameras rolled as Mayor Park cut a vine-wrapped ribbon. Then she stepped aside and gestured. Maya walked to the podium, palms damp, though butterflies had become old companions. She raised a hand for silence. The hush that settled was different from the hush in council chambers. This one carried birdsong, rustling leaves, faraway water over rocks. She strummed a single G major. The chords spread outward like ripples on a pond. Human sopranos and tenors, rabbit footfalls. Opal's purr, Sonata's bass grunt, Maestro's goose tenor, Copper's soulful baritone. The audience heard, but also felt through wooden benches that funneled vibrations earthward, uniting body and ground. Midway through, the choir modulated into a bright D, and something astonishing happened. A meadowlark perched on the amphitheater's edge and answered with its own high trill. Perfectly in key, gasps fluttered across the audience. The meadowlark's call prompted a chain reaction. Tree frogs, crickets, distant coyotes added textures impossible to notate. All rehearsed boundaries dissolved. Maya lowered her arms. The music no longer required conducting, only surrender. She looked at Copper, whose eyes mirrored the sunrise. For 3 luminous minutes, man-made and animal-born harmonies merged with the wild itself. Proof that the sanctuary already lived up to its name. When the final cadence resolved, there was no immediate applause, just a collective exhale, an instinctive desire not to sever the lingering vibration. Children hugged their parents, volunteer veterinarians wiped eyes behind sunglasses. Finally, applause thundered, but birdsong still threaded through, undaunted. Copper ambled forward and rested his head on Maya's knee. He had done everything asked of him and more. After congratulations, press conferences, and endless selfies, Maya sought a quiet slope overlooking a restored wetland. She sat with Copper, Sonata, Opal curled in her lap, Freckles stretched beside them. The sun leaned westward, setting grasses ablaze. Evan approached, carrying adoption papers. "How would you feel about making Copper's home official?" he asked. Maya blinked back tears as she signed, Copper's paw print, inked beneath her name. The choir's spiritual anchor would go home with its human conductor. Twilight arrived. Pathway lanterns flickered on, reflecting off pond water where dragonflies skimmed. Families packed picnic baskets, still humming motifs they couldn't quite place. Somewhere among reeds, Maestro settled with his wild kin. Lenny recited the auditory program's closing credits before delivering a proud, "We nailed it." Maya rose, brushing soil from her skirt, and felt the ground pulse with unseen crickets and eternal backing track. The sanctuary would keep singing long after stages dimmed. She thought of her grandfather, who had insisted that music's truest purpose was to awaken empathy. Here, empathy had built forests. Notes had translated into legislative lines, chords into hectares of refuge. She understood now that the choir had never been about novelty. It had been a conversation with possibility, conducted in frequencies older than language. As stars pricked open above, Maya whispered a promise to the animals around her and the unseen ones beyond. We will listen, we will answer. Copper nuzzled her hand in calm agreement. Behind them, the amphitheater, now empty, still resonated faintly, holding echoes of barks and whistles, purrs, and human song. Those echoes would seep into soil, rise with dawn mist, mingle with future melodies born in cattail marshes or inside a child's lungs. Tomorrow, legislators would tour trail loops, researchers would tag butterflies, skeptics would write editorials about fiscal responsibility. But tonight, an invisible choir, newly expanded, tested harmonies across the reopened corridor of sky. Somewhere close, a coyote lifted its tune, the perfect fifth to Copper's soft snore, and the Arboro Nature Sanctuary settled into a heartbeat tempo all its own slow, resilient, full of space for every voice willing to join.